Since the arrival of the age of digital creation, there have been many different tools built for the sole purpose of bringing visual ideas to life faster, with greater production flexibility and striking final results. 2D character creation has become much easier using those tools, and the process I'll be showing you today uses Adobe Photoshop 2023 to achieve that. Less is more. One of the first things to always keep in mind when you're thinking of building a character is that more often than not, less is more. The personality of a character can usually be communicated by the use of simple but very familiar shapes. Combining common shapes again and again into smaller and smaller sections is ultimately what gives us more features in the detail and design of a character. But the overall shape and silhouette of a character should be simple and recognizable enough, even without the additional details. This is of course apart from the outline. Rough sketch. In this example, I start by doing rough sketches of the general shape or outline. He's a starfish with a hat, so I knew that meant that I had to combine at least one core shape with 5 triangles. The circle is meant to house the details of the face, and the triangles are drawn to represent 2 arms, 2 legs, and hair at the top of his head held under the hat. Once I find a pose that feels natural for the character, whether that's a happy stance, a jump of excitement, a slouch of disappointment, or some other expressive pose, I want those shapes to work together to embody those feelings and that energy. Pose and body language. The dialogue and message is all in the body language, and this is further built upon by additional expressive details in the face, hands, hair, or lack thereof, and costuming. But this just means that the design choices don't always have to be complicated in order to be complex. Finding creative ways to combine, imply, and represent features and emotions through basic shapes will always give you an incredible starting point, even in the instances where the designs require fine, intricate, or even layered details. Priming flats. I then jump right into laying down what I call my priming flats. This is where I prime the layers with a base color or colors before I add gradients or ornate details or any aesthetic features. This flat color typically would set the stage for the temperature of the character's coloring. Warmer flat colors would usually lead to a final result with a warmer temperature, and of course, cooler flat colors would usually lead to a final result with an overall cooler temperature. Once my choice is made and my flats are down, I move into preparing the design for general lighting. Lighting. This is where I add subtle or hard shadows to the character design in places where it will help to give some three-dimensionality to the character's features. This is very different from any dramatic or creative lighting I may create down the line, however. This is simply to lift the various shapes and forms from appearing 100% flat and two-dimensional in the design. 3 to 4 different layers, set to multiply mode, are used to paint on top of any initial color works, so everything underneath the shadow layers gets affected by the painted shadows. Shadows tend to look great when they're being added, but using a smudge or blur tool brush to give your shadows a subtle fall off polishes your design in a simple but pretty effective way. The shadows tend to read as more believable and provides a foundation that your creative lighting will work on top of. Aesthetic details. With my lines in place, shapes working together, and the personality of the character beginning to shine through, I can now spend a lot more time polishing the character by adding finer details that should only add to the character's personality and the overall story that the total sum of these parts tell. Don't simply add details and unnecessary complexity for the sake of, unless this is in fact the aesthetic you're aiming for, in which case, happy drawing! Final touches. Now that I've walked through all of the necessary steps for creating a complete character design, I go in to do some cleanup of my colors, lighting, shadows, minor details, general color correction, and so on. In the end, you can still see the influence that my base shapes have over my character design, and it doesn't take much to communicate an emotion. Things like sizing of the eyes, the type of smile, the color of the character, and their size all contribute to the story that your character tells. Photoshop. Photoshop is an extremely powerful digital tool that creatives use for a variety of reasons. When using it to do 2D sketches, concepts, or illustrations, try to use their layer system to your advantage. Attempting all of your steps on just 1 or 2 layers can lead to a lot of stumbling, especially when you're new to it. Take your time and let your base shapes guide you accordingly. The customizable library of digital brushes is another one of its powerful features, but this should probably be used wisely. Many young artists can get caught up in the notion that brushes make the art and its artists, when in reality, knowing how to use your brushes makes all the difference. Spending some time getting familiar with your brushes and how they function helps you to navigate the workspace a lot faster and to achieve your desired output regardless of the tools you are using. The blending modes for both your brushes and your layers are options that get overlooked more often than not. When painting lighting onto a character, I like to use these modes: overlay, soft light, linear dodge, pin light, to lay the first pass of lighting, and then I come back around with my brush and layers set to linear dodge, add with a color that has a greater luminance value, which is just the color has more white in it, and paint the light. Lastly, adjusting the flow and opacity of your brushes will allow for far more control over just how much paint that flows, and as a result it affects how heavy your strokes become. In all, experiment with your settings, tools and controls, and you'll be quite surprised by how easy character creation in Photoshop becomes. Closing remarks. Looking at all of these steps, it can be very easy to understand why it would seem like a lot of work. And it is, for now, but it gets easier. This is what makes the process and the end product so rewarding. You get to have total control over each stage of your character design, molding its personality with every line, dot, shadow, and light painted. The more iterations you create and the more you practice is the better you get at the overall process. Characters and how they are drawn are only limited by your imagination and your drive to learn the tools to bring them to life. Every artist has their process, techniques, do's and don'ts. Everything I've shared today is 100% subjective to my own experience as an evolving artist. But I hope that this helps someone out there who might be considering getting that idea down onto the screen once and for all, or working with someone who will. This is the process. In closing, I would like to thank you for spending this time with me, for taking the time to look at this video. I hope that you picked up something useful in it, and I hope to see you again in the next one. So this is Kyle Stephen for the Digital Compass, doing the Character Creation 101, and I really appreciate you guys spending this time with me. Hope to see you around again. This is Kyle Stephen signing out for the Digital Compass. Remember to stay focused, stay consistent, and remember to follow the compass. Thanks guys.